Thank you so much, Sierra. Good morning, good afternoon, from wherever you are joining us today. We're so happy that you're here today and excited to get into this topic around family engagement. We know supporting families and caregivers is essential to our community work for early school success. In fact, it's so important for the campaign for grade level reading that we do call it out as one of our must-dos for mobilized communities, which makes this conversation particularly important today. In the last Crucible of Practice conversation from February, we were very focused on the importance of partnerships with families, caregivers, and school districts. And so what prompted this follow-up conversation today is that we had a Padlet full of questions to wrestle with, but the direction of that conversation was really full of information, and we didn't have quite enough time to get to the Padlet. And so we're bringing that back today, and we have a different team with us who will be sharing strategies around how they approach this topic. So we want to hold that space to have this larger conversation about the strategies for engaging with families. The Learn to Earn Dayton team is here, really happy that they're here to support us in navigating this conversation. So we are going to start, if you could go to the next slide, please. We're going to start with some introductions. You'll see all of their faces once we get into things. And so we're really happy that Wesley, Jane, Maya, and Erica are all here with us today. I do want to invite us to set the energy of this session as really collaborative. So we do have a few conversation starters and icebreakers that will kick us off. So Sierra, if you could flip over to the next slide. Okay, so this one, family engagement, I'll just read it from the screen here. Family engagement relies on that connection and relationship building, which is centered on trust. We did discuss that at great length, how to cultivate trust, what that means to build that into the relationship. That was in the last session in February. So to model this today, we're going to do just a really quick check-in, which is our first icebreaker. This is really rooted in connection with being present, being mindful with where we all are here. So the one word check-in, what I would like you to do is to please share right now how you're feeling in the chat, and we're just going to let this stream through. So please share how you're feeling right now in the chat, and we'll take just a minute. Oh, I see somebody put tired. Curious, busy, awesome. Good. Keep it coming. Okay, I want to say too, I appreciate where everyone is coming from. And I am hopeful, I see hopeful there, that this next 90 minutes that we're going to spend together will really root us in something that's important to all of us. So thank you for doing that. Okay, let's go to the next conversation starter, and you can keep it coming too if you want to just check in with yourself on how you're feeling. This is the next one. We're really curious about where people are in the space of engaging with families. I recognize and acknowledge that we're all coming to this work from different places, whether you be with a school district or whether you be with a nonprofit or a funder. And so just share a minute here about where you are in the spectrum of engaging with families. If you do not have that opportunity, if you're more in the systems change, not working directly with folks, or the other end of the spectrum is where you're engaging with people quite a lot. What I would like to call out is for those folks who are either a B, C, or a D, not to leave the A folks out. If we will have some questions regarding direct contact with families when we get to the Padlet, and so I really super encourage you to use your voice and come off mute when we get to that piece of the discussion. And for the folks who are in A, there are questions for you as well. And so I'm hopeful that you will also feel emboldened to come off of mute when we get to that discussion component. All right, if we could go to the very next slide, please. This is our last conversation starter and check-in. When considering family engagement in your community, where has that focus been? Has it been more on supporting access to resources? Has it been about building partnerships with families, supporting awareness about helpful services, all of the above, or other? So just take a moment and reflect on that. What I will say is that the Learn to Earn Dayton team, they do all of the above. And so I feel some urgency to let's get to it. Let's hear what they have to say and their strategies. So at this point, if we could go to the next slide, we're going to go right into it with our first leader from Learn to Earn Dayton team. I'm going to put myself on mute. Learn to Earn Dayton, go ahead and take it away. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Malai. Good afternoon, everyone. We are so excited today to present to you, to share with you the work that we're doing with our families and with attendance and with reading proficiency in Dayton, Ohio. So we are excited to be here. My team, my wonderful team today is going to share with you some examples of the work that we're doing. And so to get us started, I'm going to pass that over to Wesley to get us going.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Next slide, please. Thank you. So I'd like to start off by kind of just framing how we kind of came up with this concept. So the Early Grade Literacy Coalition is really designed to make sure that we are utilizing our partners to make sure that we are reaching a common goal. So with the early grade literacy, basically the way that we looked at it is the first thing we do is we look at the data, which I'll show on some next slides. That gives us a snapshot of the what. And then the coalition kind of tells us how we're going to shape it. And then to kind of round it off, the part of the most important part, which is the funnest part of it, is that we actually have to use your heart to tell the story. So all three of those things allow us to be able to tell a story, make sure that we understand why we're doing it, and it keeps everybody on the same goal. So the EGLC is a coalition that was brought together by community partners, nonprofits, in order to solve the issue with literacy in Montgomery County. Next slide, please. So here we get into the snapshot. We look at the reading skills. As you can probably see, 63% of the students are on grade level in reading and professional rate. But the issue is when you break this down, you have to look at where the numbers are based on who you're talking about. So right now, you can see the African-American community right now is at a disadvantage. It has a very big gap, as well as our Hispanic population as well. And when you take that into account to the overall numbers, it really does give us a situation where we really want it to be at 100%. We need every single student in our county by third grade to be able to read proficiently. So 63% is really not where we want to be. We definitely want to be higher than that. Next slide. And then you go into the absenteeism. We all know that compacted with students not performing on grade level, you turn around and then you have a situation where students aren't coming to school. So I know that we're kind of, hopefully, we're seeing the residual effects of COVID and, not having to basically be present. But this is really impacting the students' ability to be able to close this gap that is so important to our overall goal. So you can see by this slide, our African-American community, our low-income community, and our Hispanic community, are all far under the line that would allow us to be able to even achieve closing the gap. So the first thing we need to do is we need to get our students reading again. And then, of course, we also need to make sure that absenteeism, that rate gets lower. So we'll be able to really be able to affect shortening that gap to make sure that they get caught up. And I'd like to pass it on back to Maya for our information about our programs.
Thank you, Wes. So as Wesley just shared, the Early Grade Literacy Collaborative is focused on multiple elements, that being attendance, literacy, family engagement. And so I want to talk to you at the next slide about our Mighty Classroom. Thank you. So our Mighty Classroom is a school-based program offered to Montgomery County schools. We targeted low-performing, high absenteeism students. In the fall of 2023, we piloted our Mighty Classrooms. It was a demonstration class created in partnership between Trotwood City Schools and Learn to Earn. And over the summer, Learn to Earn, we reviewed the data that Trotwood had. to make sure that we targeted the students that we wanted to support. And we learned that there were some additional resources that students needed and the school needed to really help to combat some of the learning gaps. And so what I want to show on the next slide, thank you, is the elements of a Mighty Classroom. So with a Mighty Classroom, you have to have a certified teacher. An experienced teacher is preferred, as well as a paraprofessional. And so because of the science of reading is important, it's important in our state, and it's important as a practice nationally, we want to make sure that we also incorporated that into our Mighty Classroom program. And so with that, we focus on supporting the teacher. We go in the classroom, we help to read to the students. We have high dosage tutoring to provide extra academic support. And we also focus on attendance and family engagement. So we do track our data using a tool called Learning Circle. It is a data management tool that we use to be able to really see month to month the progress of our students, as well as the communication and the resources that we are also trying to help provide to families. Next slide, please. So our pilot year was last year, and last year we started with a first grade classroom. We saw that 75% of the students in that classroom maintained or improved attendance. And so what that equates to 14.2 additional days in school. And so there was an old saying that I used to hear around here that if you miss school, you miss out. And so we know that really missing school really adds up to students performing on grade level in reading as well as other subjects. And so we are really excited and we're focused on that. We want to make sure that we help parents and families understand the importance of students coming to school, because we also seen in academics that there was an increase there as well. That you see here that nearly 70% of kindergarten, first and second grade students met their goals from fall to winter. So we know our first grade students from last year were able to meet their goals. One, we attribute that to them being at school. Two, we also attribute that to having the parent engagement and support and helping them to understand the importance of attending school, but also it's the partnership with us, with the teachers as well. So next slide, please. Erica is going to talk to us about family engagement.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm excited to be here with everyone today to share some of the strategies that we utilize with family engagement. And before going into this first slide, I just want to emphasize and reiterate that building relationships, trust, and connection with the families and the schools is the most essential piece to family engagement. Building those relationships is extremely important in order to utilize the strategies that we have in place. So one of the things that we like to say is empowering families, and with this particular strategy, it's tools for effective advocacy and education. So first and foremost, empowering the families, educating families on their rights and responsibilities as caregivers, and creating that open communication, encouraging families to ask questions, whether during conferences or throughout the year, and promoting continuous engagement to keep families informed and involved. Encouraging families to speak up, ask questions, dive into what's happening in the classroom, and to utilize whatever platforms the district is using to communicate with their child's teacher, principal, or anyone on the staff. And then we also like to provide resource awareness, providing information to families on resources available. Being a community engagement coordinator, visiting and knowing all the tools that there are in the community and providing the families access to these resources is extremely important, because sometimes there are things that I cannot provide, but there are people in the community that can provide these resources for the family, and this becomes a advocacy for them, because then they are able to seek and provide these resources for themselves. Educating families on the district's chain of command for effective advocacy. And what I mean by this is if a family has a particular issue with let's say staff at the school building, we want them to know that they're able to reach out to that school. A lot of times they're not aware of how to effectively communicate or reach out to the right person. So like if they're trying to reach out to someone at the board, but it can be solved at the school level, so you want to teach them who's involved, who are the intervention specialists, who are the counselors, who are the nurse or anyone at the school, introducing them to these people and providing them with the information to be able to communicate with them. And then the next one also speaks about offering access to essential contact information, which I said earlier, including phone numbers, websites, and addresses. So helping them become advocates of their child's education by providing them the actual tools that they need to be able to reach this level of success. Next slide, please. This slide also talks about advocacy as well. Regular attendance encouragement, actively encouraging families to attend school meetings through various communication channels, including Parent Square, which is what the district uses here in Montgomery County, phone calls, and text messages. What we learn when engaging with families is that they do not all use the same form of communication tools. Sometimes it's easier to reach a family via text message than it is via a phone call. So kind of getting to know the families that you're working with and figuring out what are the best ways to get in touch with them. Some families prefer text messages. Some families prefer to look on Parent Square. So just being proactive and, getting to know the families that you're working with and finding out what are the best ways to contact your families or to reach out to them. And then reinforcement of information. To emphasize the importance of attending meetings by consistently resharing relevant information that comes from the schools. So sometimes it could be a little overwhelming, oversharing, having multiple children in the same district, you're getting information more than once, sometimes twice a day. But we want to let them know and reinforce to them that this is important so that they are aware of what's happening in the school, that they are aware that they're welcomed, that they are aware that there are meetings, that their input is necessary, and that we want them to be a part of these meetings and activities and events. Explicitly inviting families to participate in school activities, assuring them that their presence is valued and welcome. Again, excuse me, reassuring them that they are wanted and needed, and that it is very important for their presence to be there. To stress the significance of their input and expertise. So no one knows a child like their parent does, right? So a family member, whether it's mom, dad, grandma, or sometimes we like to say a champion in their family, it could be a coach, it could be anyone who actively engages with this child. No one knows that child better than these people. So their input and their expertise is definitely welcomed and wanted in family engagement. And to reassure families that their involvement in school meetings is a crucial part of building a collaborative and supported educational environment. Again, creating relationships is the core of family engagement. We have to make sure that the families are knowing that not only do we want them to be active in their child's education, but that it is important, it is crucial, and that is also, again, promoting advocacy for them to be able to take lead and take charge in their child's education. Next slide, please. And then another strategy to empower families to stay informed is, what do families know? In many family engagement conferences and professional developments that I've attended, we always use, and I've heard it now a lot more since COVID, is meeting families where they are. But one of the things that I started to think about when engaging families is, where are they? You know, where are the families? Where are they mentally? Where are they physically, emotionally? Meeting them where they are, we have to know where they are to meet them there. So um, some of the things that we recognize when at analyzing data in literacy awareness and absenteeism is that 2 listening sessions that we hosted for the last school year revealed a lack of understanding among families on interpreting student tests and score data. So what we did was we printed out the parent sheet that goes home every time your child takes a test and their data comes out, their test scores come out. We pulled them up and printed them out and had them in front of the families, and we asked them, do you understand what's on this paper? And surprisingly, more than half of them looked at the paper and they were like, you know, trying to explain to us what they thought the papers meant and said and relay the information back to us, and they just didn't know how to read those scores. Families were also unaware that their students were reading below grade level, emphasizing the need to break down and simplify test score data. So in the listening session also, we asked the question. Well, what we did was we surveyed the families first before the listening sessions. And in the survey, one of the questions was, do you believe your child is reading at or above grade level? And every family said yes, every family. And truth was that some of the children weren't reading at grade level and they were 2 grades below grade level in reading. Um, the realization that caregivers were unaware of their students' literacy level inspired the initiative like Reading is Lit, which you'll learn about a little later, to bridge the information gap and promote literacy awareness. Um, Engagement activities also highlighted that families struggled to recall essential terms like CVC, consonant vowel consonant terms found in the science of reading, and rules crucial for supporting their children's reading abilities. So, excuse me, this actually came from a platform that I was utilizing to contact families. And one of the things that I did to promote engagement was created a calendar, 30-day calendar of events that they can share on this platform. And a lot of the families began, you know, talking to each other and utilizing this platform effectively to communicate about homework and things of that nature. And one of the dads reached out to me and sent me a picture of the homework and said, I don't know what this is. And, you know, I had to think about it. Like, if I weren't in this space and if I weren't, you know, working in education, would I remember what CVC terms were? Probably not. So that's also a part of what do families know, right? Making sure that they know what they're doing to support their children at home. Families also acknowledge the importance of daily at-home reading, which, you know, we asked in the survey, do you read with your child? How often do you read? And what are you reading? And reading, but they express a lack of knowledge regarding suitable materials for effective reading sessions with their students. So at a certain grade level, your child should be reading, you know, certain books. They should be progressing in their reading efficiency. And because the children were reading things like the cat went to the park, they're in their minds, they're thinking like, oh yeah, my child could read, but they're not knowing the materials and the level of reading that the child needs to be at for their age and their grade level. The survey also revealed that the families lacked awareness regarding the consequences of absenteeism. So not knowing the numbers, not knowing that missing 1 day a week equals this amount of hours per month, and not knowing that that affects them tremendously in, you know, regaining that what they missed that day, and having to catch the child up if they missed a whole session, or if they missed, you know, the 4th day of the week when they tested what they learned on the 1st day of the week, and having to catch them up. They weren't aware of the effects that missing 1 day a week or 2 days a month, you know, had on their child. Next slide, please. And then another strategy that I really like to enforce and use with the families is to seek additional supports. So we hear a lot, you know, and we know working in this, being in this work and working in this field, that we can't do it all. You know, we want to help every family. We want to be able to, you know, do things for them and help them all and embrace them all. And we can do that by utilizing the resources that there are already available in our communities. We have so many different resources that we can connect the families to, and we have to be able to utilize those supports to help us in getting the families where they need to be. So connecting families to community resources, actively facilitate connections between families and community resources to enhance overall support services. And sometimes I like to look at situations as case by case, right? Not every family is going to need the same amount of care, the same amount of support. Their circumstances might be different. The things that they're going through might be different. Their schedules might be different. A family might want to um, interact and be active with engaging, but they work third shift and they're sleeping during the day. So how do we utilize different forms of resources to help them get to where they want to be? Resource awareness, to serve as a liaison. I mean, that's always part of our work, you know, like I said, and also utilizing the staff at the school, utilizing the people that are their support staff and helping everyone figure out how to, you know, get the families connected, and referring families to services, which is something that I use a lot. Being in the community, I know of case management and mental health facilities and resources that I can connect the families to, or even identifying that there may be something that the family itself needs. Maybe the mom or dad or caregiver needs to know where to go to take their GED classes, or you know, because when you help one person in the family, in turn you help everyone in the home. Connecting everyone to resources and being able to identify what those needs are is essential. Really essential. So, you know, just making sure that we connect them to the resources in the community. And I will pass it off to Wesley.
All right, thank you, Erica. And one of the things, oh, next slide, please. Sorry about that. So one of the things you have to kind of realize is that it is important in order to build what we call that village to support your goal. So let's say just taking a look at you know, the reading proficiency scores that are down pretty far in Montgomery County. You know, how are we going to build this team? Well, just like any team that you build, you have to be able to have relationships with people that have the common goal that you do. So as Erica mentioned, it is so important that you entrench yourself in a school staff and let them know, hey, listen, we're here to help. How can we help? Are there processes that you can help us, that we can help you support, that you may not be you may be understaffed? So there's just some phone calls that we can make. I mean, really be the backbone of the work that needs to be done, because sometimes because of resource issues and staffing issues, you just don't have the opportunity to do that. So collaboration is so key. So we have partners that we work with the early grade literacy committee that are helping us form the how to take care of the work. But then you also have to be partners with the parents. As Erica mentioned so beautifully, you have to be able to have them trust you. So the collaboration of people that are around you that have resources, nonprofits, library. So for example, on our EGLC, we have Dayton Art Institute, Dayton Metro Library, of course, Montgomery County ESC, Think TV, Trotwood Madison Schools that are allowing us, a school district, any school have to allow you to come into their building and help. And unfortunately, sometimes that can be a barrier. But there's a way around all barriers. There's somebody in that school, somebody in that school district that's going to hear your story and make sure that they are influencing the minds behind what happens to get you into that school so that you can help do the best work that you possibly can. Getting to know the school staff. We've done a really good job this year at making sure that we're entrenched in getting to know the family engagement people, the attendance people, because even though we have the data and even though we have a plan, they're the ones that are going to help us execute. So that's the only way that a plan gets fulfilled A great idea is a great idea, right? But unless somebody's willing to accept that help and accept that support and accept that love, because the end goal is always the students being able to read better and enriching their lives in the end is very, very key. So you may have a good plan, you may have a good program, but you have to know the people that are behind it because they're the ones that are going to be able to help you execute your plan. And of course, all those people together is the overall arching theme of what we're talking about today, which is partnerships. Partnerships are so important because at the end of the day, the result of what happens with these strong partners enable you to really be able to get to the goal that you're trying to get to at the end. And wraparound services, love is good and we want to love on them all, but there has to be a strategic way to go about it. And that's one of the things we've been able to do so far in the last 2 years. Next slide, Ms. Jane.
Good afternoon, everyone. One of the things that we've done is create a literacy kit to go home. And before we do a whole lot of discussion about that, we have a video to share with you. So let's cue the video and then we'll go back to the slide with Blaze. You will notice that Erica and her daughter Nori were our models. All the slides you've seen today are actual photos of kiddos who have been participating in our program and their families and their teachers. So as we go through this, you're seeing real people. It's really important for us, for our community, to see themselves in this program. I get to talk now about one of the more exciting parts of this program. And it is the development of a kit that we call Reading is Lit. In Dayton, we're fortunate enough to have a preschool promise program that has boxes that are sent home to kiddos who are in preschool, 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds in Dayton, and 4-year-olds in the county. So a number of our students are used to receiving boxes in the mail and books in the mail with activities. And because it was so well received, Learn to Earn Dayton has developed this kit called Reading is Lit with the partnership of our local Think TV and some of our other partners, as Wesley named earlier, the Dayton Montgomery County Library, the Dayton Art Institute, and also our Learning Circle. We have been working with them to come up with curriculum that goes home to families. It's aligned to the state standards and much aligned with the science of reading. The first book that we developed and used was the popular children's book, Chicka Chicka Boom Boom. We used it as the basis of the first box because many families are familiar with this book, and we thought this would make the box more approachable. What the box contains is a lot of family engagement activities. These are boxes that go home. So this is not necessarily one that's used in the classroom. There are some classroom teachers do have access to this box, but this goes home to a family and a student. And they have a number of activities that they can expand and practice on at home. You'll notice in the one illustration, you see people at desks working. That's because we incorporated actual practicing teachers to work with us on the development of the activities. It's important to make sure that our teachers and our in-class educators have an idea of what's going on with the boxes, but also know that it's grounded in today's educational practice as opposed to yesterday's educational practice. Chicka Chicka Boom Boom was designed for first semester kindergarten. And because it is a letter identification book. It does capital letters and small letters as you read through it. It allows our first semester kindergartners to start to learn their letters, which is one of the Ohio standards. Next slide, please. All right, the box includes a book, and as you know now, that's the Chicka Chicka Boom Boom, and hands-on activities that reinforce learning. If you notice, we have some activities that, and you saw in the little video, activities that are based in word families, letter identification, learning how to manipulate a pen or to build letters from wiki sticks or clay. So kiddos can do things tactically as well as looking at them and identifying. In the box, an important component of the box are 2 cards. One card is for kiddos. So if the kiddo opens the box first and he has a card, or he or she has a card that tells them the activities and kind of gives them pictures to go along. There is also a card for parents, and parents can see the value of the activity. Excuse me, families. Families can see the value of the activity and can help guide their students. We don't want to lecture parents about terms like dialogic reading, but we want to provide parents with ways of helping them engage their students, their children in reading. So we have QR codes in the box and on the cards, so parents can look on YouTube or on PBS to learn how to see the best way of engaging their students. Many of these boxes and many of the activities are designed for students and kiddos to do over and over and over again. And at this point, we're creating a digital resource for wider use in program sustainability. Next slide, please. As you have heard, public engagement and community engagement is very important to us. And one of the things that we have done through the EGLC and Learn to Earn Dayton is host author events. And with these, we want people to be able to think about what reading is and what literacy is. Last year, we had author Maya Payne-Smart, and she came and discussed the importance of reading in the early years. And her book is Reading for Our Lives, and it's from birth to kindergarten. We've also picked up this year a book by Ken Williams. He's going to be here on May 9th. Now, if you are local, you're more than welcome to join us. We'd love to have you, and please use the QR code. But we have no way of being able to share this nationally. But if you haven't read his book, or if you haven't had an opportunity to hear him on YouTube or on a TV program, you may want to touch base with him. You can see he looks like quite a character, and he gives a loving presentation, but he asks the hard questions about what we are actually doing and how we are doing it in our classrooms and at home. The EGLC also presents annually. Preschool Promise provides a readiness summit, and last year and this year both, we discussed our boxes and our outreach to the community. So please, if you're local, save the date, May 9th. We'd love to have you. And if you have any questions, please be sure and put them down in the Q&A. Maya?
Thank you, Jane. So as you heard, we here at Learn to Earn are committed to closing the reading proficiency gap here in Montgomery County. We know that educators cannot do this work by themselves, and so it is imperative for all of us as a community to be able to support our students in closing that gap. So we are really excited about the work we're doing. We're learning every day, and so we would love to hear from you and any suggestions or comments that you may have for us as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maya. Sierra, if you could go to the next slide. Here we have the contact information. Oops, go back. There you go. Contact information for our team from Learn to Earn Dayton. We have Maya, Wesley, Erica, Jane, if you
And
would.
we'll put Jane in the chat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. I appreciate that. We do have a couple of questions that came up related to the reading is lit boxes, and so I want to catch those questions, and then we'll move into a larger group discussion using Padlet. So the first question that came up around the literacy kit, reading is lit boxes, there were a couple of questions around whether or not this was available in other languages. And so just wondering if there is availability for other languages with those boxes.
That's a great question. We just recently had a conversation about putting the boxes in other languages. We know currently we do have a couple students who are Spanish, native background is Spanish, and so we are looking at doing a translation in Spanish. But it is something that is possible. But right now we don't currently have our boxes bilingual at this time. But it is something that we are working towards.
Thanks, Maya. Another question is about the funding component. How were the pieces funded to put the materials together for the reading is lit boxes?
Good question. So we are funded by a funder, local funder, I should say, the Iddings Foundation, who helps to support this work. They are focused on literacy efforts. And so that is how we were able to get number one, the Early Grade Literacy Collaborative going, but in particular also our literacy boxes. However, we do have additional funders that have come in, the Tate Foundation as well, and Centerpoint. And so we are always looking for other funders to help fund this work because we want to get as many boxes into the families' hands as possible in this county. So right now, we don't have like one funder that does it all. And so we are looking for opportunities and ways to collaborate with other funders to be able to help us to continue to fund the boxes.
That's great. And I think we've got one more question related specifically to those boxes. So Jane had mentioned that there would be or there are already digital resources related to those. The question was around if families have trouble accessing those online resources, what are the supports to ensure that families can access it digitally if needed?
So in particular with our Mighty classroom families, they do have us as support. Like Erica talked about, she is constantly engaged with the families and communicating with them. And so if our Mighty classroom families have any issues, we're there to support that. As we are building the digital component for us to be able to have more access for anyone to be able to use the reading is lit boxes, we are working on putting those communication mechanisms in place. Right now, those questions will come to us and we'll try to help troubleshoot at this moment.
Great. And
If I may, can I add something to that?
yeah,
Sure.
please.
We've been using the resources of PBS,
Yes.
and they have been our partner, and all of the resources for PBS are free for the public. And we've had the advantage that they are able to kind of go through their huge catalog and help us get to the specific ones we need. But any teacher or any family, any parent member of PBS has access to all of those online. And as a matter of fact, you don't even have to be a member of PBS. You just can go online, and a lot of their practice sessions and things are digitized, so families can listen to them on their phone, on their laptop, on their desktop.
Thank you, Jane. That's great.
Yeah, I think that actually answers the question here in the chat around how can we get that literacy kit. And so I think maybe you just answered it. Would there be anything else that you would want to add around the literacy kit and access for those who are with us today?
Only thing that I would say is right now we're working on releasing our spring kindergarten box. We wanted to roll this out in stages. And so right now we focused on kindergarten as our first round of boxes. By fall of this year, we will have grades K through 2 boxes available. And then by 25, we will have grades K through 3 boxes. So we're adding on boxes as we go along. But you can go to Learn to Earn, our website, learn-to-earn-dayton.org, and can kind of stay up to date with what's going on in the progress. But we are right now in the mix of designing our spring box, so we're really excited about that. That book would be The Rhyming Dust Bunnies. And so we are excited as well to engage kindergarten teachers and first grade teachers from our area to help us to design the boxes. And so we're really intentional about that.
That's
But
great.
coming soon, more information coming soon. We'll get that out to you so that you can share it with your with the network as well.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Maya. All right. So at this point, we're going to transition. I did catch up to see what was in the QA, and I think we caught all of those questions there. So we're going to flip over to Padlet. There were a couple of questions that came up in chat a little bit earlier, and so I threw those into the Padlet. I'm hoping that at this point, not only the Learn to Earn team will be putting voice behind these, but also everybody that is here with us so that we can have an inclusive conversation about the things that came up. So just give me a second. What I like to do, and I can't talk and do things at the same time, so I'm going to put the link to the Padlet in the chat so that everybody can access it, and then I'm going to share my screen as we work through these questions. Okay, so the link is there. So let me share screen, and we'll go through really quickly how to work Padlet. For those of you who would like to join in and add comments, you should be seeing my screen at this point. So the way to work through Padlet, and we're going to go question by question. I might hop around a little bit, but if you would like to participate and prefer to not come off of mute for any of these questions, all you have to do is click on the box that you would like to answer a question, and then you can say add comment. So we're going to do a test here. I'm going to type test, and then the little arrow will come up, and then you just post your comment. So that's for folks who prefer not to come off of mute. If you have a response to any of the questions, you can respond here. What I'd really like, though, is to have a conversation with people. And so I'd love to have folks come off of mute and answer these questions. So what will happen at the end of the session is that I will capture everything that is on the Padlet, and I will send that out with the follow-up resources so that we have a nice curated collection of responses to these questions around family engagement. I know that people that are coming in here today are interested in family engagement, and I'm really hoping that we can learn together with this piece. So this came up, this question came up pretty directly, I think perhaps when Wesley was talking. I can't remember when this came up. But the question was, I wonder if terms like your student versus your child make a difference for families. How does tone in messaging play a role? And so this is a question for everybody. I do turn to the Learn to Earn Dayton team, though, to respond to how you are mindful of tone and messaging when you're engaging with families. And I'm going to type out your answers as you speak on this one.
So Erica,
go ahead, Maya.
Erica or Wesley and Jane could jump in as well, but because of the dynamic of how families are made up right now, households are made up, we try to be very sensitive, in selecting what is the best word to use, and identifying, is it a student or is it a child? But because families are very diverse, sometimes students are living with their parents and sometimes they're living with someone else. And so when we write letters, we're trying to be very intentional, or when we communicate, trying to be very sensitive but intentional about how we communicate. And so we tend to lean towards student because we want to make sure that we're not being offensive in any way as well. But I do understand, I've seen that come up in the chat, that someone said, I prefer for it to be said my child versus my student. And so I think that's been our approach, is to say student, to kind of be more inclusive of the family dynamics. But my team can speak to that as well.
Yeah, real quickly, I think that there's a really simple way to think about it in terms of names, right? So your name is, you are very sensitive, or most people are very sensitive about their name. I know my team always laughs at me because I introduce myself as Wesley O. Biles II. Well, I do that because my father is the first. So I need some delineation. Not that he's a bad guy. I love my dad to death, and he is a wonderful, wonderful resource in my life. but I want to make sure that I have a name and he has a name. So I make sure that the second comes out. And I think that one of the main ways to lose a student, if you're a teacher, substitute teacher, you go into a room and you mispronounce a student's name, that engagement right there may lend that child not to give you the best day that you probably could had if you had asked them, hey, listen, before I mispronounce your name, it's a sign of kindness, it's a sign of respect. And I think that when you are talking about student versus child, I could be talking to a caregiver and say, oh, well, your child X, Y, and Z. And the response sometimes can immediately be, oh, that's not my son, or that's not my daughter. That's my niece, or that's my nephew.
Right.
So even that that correction itself can lend that start to pull apart. You're already not always necessarily trusting each other, but getting a name right and getting a label right sometimes makes people understand that you have a connection and not to pull that connection apart before too long.
And I just want to jump in and say one other thing. So my name is Maya, and I'm often pronounced Maya. And so yes, it is sometimes like, oh, they said my name wrong. Names matter, but names is also tied to relationship, and I think that's what Wesley's kind of talking about. If you know me, then you will take the time to say my name correctly. You will take the time to spell my name correctly as well. And so when we're talking to families, I think keeping those things in mind, and also, like I said, being inclusive in our approach is very important.
I appreciate that you said that. It's hard to not notice that my name is different. And so being a child, being having my name mispronounced in class really set me off in a certain way. And I always knew when a substitute teacher would roll in when they got to my name during roll call, because there'd be this long dramatic pause and I would feel like really embarrassed about that.
Yes.
And it still kind of sits with me. And so thank you for saying that. I appreciate that.
Try at your college graduation.
Oh,
Your
yeah.
name being
Right?
mispronounced. Yes.
Yeah, great. When Wesley was speaking, I saw someone had their hand raised, S. Hunter, and so I would like to invite S to come off of mute. And did you have something to ask?
Yes, I was just going to basically say about the tone, it's everything. It's not what we say, as we know, it's how we say it. And then I also want to say, when we get the tone from a child, like their tone that we might think is disrespect, to them is not disrespect, because that's how they get spoken to at home. So we have to know the difference.
Yeah, appreciate that. Thank you. I do want to catch a question came up in chat. The Padlet will remain available for people to hop in later to put comments in. So thank you, Leah, for that question. Before we move on, I wondered if there was anything else anyone wanted to add, and then I'll just move us along. I'll wait a second. Okay, I'm going to go to the next question. It's very clear that the relationship with the school district is integral to the success of what you're doing. And so this has been a place where some of our communities have had some challenges and how to have a great collaborative relationship with their school districts. So I'm wondering, for the Learn to Earn Dayton team, first we'll ask you and then have others chime in. How have you entered into this collaboration? What have been some things that you've done to help cultivate that strong partnership that you have with the school districts?
So I think it is trust, that Learn to Earn has earned trust among the school districts here in the county. We produce an annual report every year for our Montgomery County schools. And so that has just, through relationships, I think, we're able to go to school districts and say, hey, we have this idea, or we would like to collaborate with you, and vice versa. Sometimes they call us and say, hey, we need help thinking through how to solve a certain issue. And then we come together internally to try to figure out, can we support that? because Learn to Earn is a backbone organization, cradle-to-career. And so it is our job to try to research and come up with some best practices that we can recommend. A lot of times as a backbone, we're not doing direct service. So with the boxes in particular, it's more direct service than our traditional work. But we know one of the things that the school districts have really spoke to is the need for family engagement. Right. And so we don't want to interrupt the day-to-day curriculum and the academic components of the school, but how do we support the academics, the core academics and the attendance? And a lot of times districts are asking the question like, we need help, engaging families. And so because that is something that we have, that we do internally at Learn to Earn, we were like, how do we blend our family engagement work with also our literacy focus or our academic focus? And so it's been conversations of, hey, we have this idea. What do you think? Is that it? Do you have a need? And so I would say it's through relationships, and it's tough because administration changes,
Right.
and everybody's leadership style is different. And so trying to maintain those relationships and to support those needs are not always easy, but it is something that we try here at Learn to Earn to be intentional about staying involved with our superintendents and understanding like the shifts that are happening in their districts. And then we are trying to figure out how to problem solve or how to support those different various needs.
Wesley, you had your hand up, and then Leah, I see you. We'll get to you in a second.
Okay, just real quickly, like Maya said, to her credit, and Maya devised a plan to make sure that she had a relationship with the superintendent, because that's where it started. That communication that was endorsed by the superintendent allowed the ball to start rolling. Okay, the boots on the ground part that Erica and I do, by being the boots on the ground people, we are the ones that develop a relationship with the principals, with the attendance clerk, with the family engagement specialist. So on every level, we've been intentional about making sure that we've developed relationships and we get that message to those people first. A lot of times you'll do situations like this and you go right into the school, and the school's like, I'm not really sure what's going on. Maya started with developing a relationship with the superintendent first. And I felt like that gave it teeth. And then when we supported that with the message with everyone that was has direct service in the school, that made it a lot easier. So really, I think that's kudos to Maya for developing that way.
Thank you. Leah, would you like to come off mute and join us? Thank you. Leah Van Bell with 313 Reads. Go ahead, Leah.
First of all, I'm just blown away by your work. Like, this is really exciting and powerful. And I really appreciated your comment, David, about some of the things that Wesley, I'm so sorry. Wesley, that some of the things we do, it's hard to show that direct impact, but it doesn't mean that they're not important. So thank you for lifting that up. One of the things that is really interesting, what you're naming about this partnership with districts, is Detroit is a space unlike other spaces where about 50% of our kids go to public charters. At my own, I will disclose. And we also have a school district that had a hostile takeover, right? And so there's this deep distrust, and now we have this very functioning Detroit Public Schools community district that is very insular, right? We're going to do it. We got it. It's taken care of. And so it's been really interesting to navigate that, with Every School That Counts Detroit and 313 Reads, trying to mobilize a community schools model. And I really appreciate all that you're naming, Maya, about the importance of those relationships. And we found that we were able to have success in building those. Maybe it's not the time now at the district level, but more at the school level with individual principals, and then with some of the charters. And all these things that you're talking about, our summer and out of school time providers were very eager to learn how they could grow attendance, because everyone's leading from love. But this, have a pizza party for attendance, evidence shows us it doesn't work, right? So how do we support people? So we got funding for a community of practice to work with Attendance Works, to provide some professional learning to folks, community-based programs. It was so impactful to them that they asked to continue it into the summer, so to make it 18 months instead of a year. And And we also had a report through Detroit Peer, which is at Wayne State University here in Detroit, looking at the very clear relationship between early literacy and attendance, right? Like, so I think it's this thing of, I just so appreciate the way you're naming the complexities. It's not just like, well, our families don't care about getting kids to school. Like, there are significant barriers to transportation and other things. And I just so appreciate you, Maya, centering the relationship piece. I just wanted to come off mute to say, like, this is resonating so deeply. We have grappled with so much of this. And for us, or if anyone else is feeling like the big main district maybe isn't the entry point, like smaller charters maybe, individual schools maybe, and community-based programs can still be that entry point too.
Absolutely. And I just want to say, Leah, thank you for coming off mute because we want to see 313. We want to come make a visit. So let's connect. So that's perfect. But
As
yes,
long as none of you went to Ohio State, because go blue. So it's all.
my dad did. Sorry. But no, what you're saying is very important, and I think making those correlations for families. And I always say I've never met a parent that didn't want the best for their child. I think parents just don't know, and so trying to figure out ways to connect, make school less intimidating for families is important. And I think Learn to Earn has an opportunity to kind of be that conduit to do that. And so we try to serve in that space. We're very clear with the district that we're not trying to usurp them in any way. We're really trying to collaborate and partner with them. And I think both sides really appreciate that partnership because we're trying to support both. You know, we're trying to be a voice for the school, but we're also being a voice for the families. And so I think both sides understand our role, and it really puts us in a good place to support. So really want to learn from you, Leah, and come visit. So thank you for coming off mute. Appreciate that.
Yeah, so what I'm happy to do is connect both of your teams together. So look for me to do that. And that'll come out after our session today, obviously, because I can't talk and type at the same time. So we'll make sure that that connection happens.
Sure.
Let's move to a different question that came up. I want to stay on this thread of chronic absenteeism because it is an important one. We know that it is a serious issue, and it has just come up here. So one of the questions that I had pinned for us to talk about is how that chronic absenteeism continues to have a negative impact for learning for young children. And surveys were one of those ways that you were able to understand the perceptions of families related to data. What were your takeaways about the process of administering those surveys? This question goes to the Learn to Earn Dayton team, but also if others would like to pipe in around surveys and how those administrating surveys, what has been those best practices?
I'll let Erica and Wesley talk about that.
So we use Google Forms for our surveys. And I like to say, like how Leah mentioned about the pizza parties, I think it was Leah, stuff like that doesn't always work. It's being relentless, right? It's calling and texting and emailing and sometimes coming and knocking on a door if you have to. Like, you know, it's encouraging the families to know and understand that their input is valid, their input is necessary. In order for us to make the changes that they want to see, we need to know what are the changes that they want to see. So just being relentless in your efforts and just, you know, like I said, connection and trust, building that trust is essential. If they start looking at you just like another member of their extended family versus you know, a school individual or staff or faculty, and start looking at you as someone that they can trust, and they actually start believing that their input is valid, then they're going to go ahead and take their time to submit those surveys because now they believe and know that their input is valid.
And kind of adding to what Erica was saying, I think it's so interesting. And you, I'll say it like this: you have to have a diverse background on your team in order to get the message across to whoever you need to get it across to. So, if you're a learned person and you're using 3-syllable and 4-syllable words to someone that may not read that well, you're not going to get the response you want. As soon as somebody looks at, and Erica does this all the time, she says, keep the survey short because people aren't going to do any more than 4 questions or 5 questions. So we respect that. The other thing is that you have to be able to put things in terminology that people will be able to understand it so that you get the answer that you want back. So when we do surveys, we all try to figure out what do we want, what information do we want to get? And then after we siphon that off and we come up with a few elongated questions, then we go to how are we going to say it? And will this way that we're saying it get the response that we want? Black or white, yes or no. And that way you have really, really good data that allows you to be able to work from, as opposed to somebody just, kids, sometimes you take a test and it gets long and you're like, you know what? Yes, 5, 2. You're going to get a really jaded response, but we try to keep it concise, make sure the language reaches our audience, and then trust the information that we're getting back because we've already formulated what we want to know from what we're trying to survey.
Beautiful, thank you. I want to invite others who have used surveys to pipe in. What has been the process for others? So this would be not the Learn to Earn Dayton team. They've reflected on their things. Are there others that have used surveys that are here with us today that can chime in on this? Okay, my wait time isn't great, so I'm going to move us on. And if you want to say anything about this, feel free to add it into the Padlet. Let me go back to chat and see if we are catching anything. All right, so I do want to invite Amani to come off of mute if you feel comfortable to come off mute and put voice behind your comments.
I placed in the chat that our community is a growing immigrant community. We have children here from Afghanistan, Guatemala, Syria, a lot of different places. There are very few literacy materials and family engagement strategies that address the families that we care for. I also placed in the chat that 40% of our student population had a 40% mobility rate, and this was prior to the COVID school shutdowns. Essentially, what this means is that at least 50% of the children in our district do not have a permanent home. They report more than one address per school year. This, needless to say, contributes to absenteeism, children not being at grade level proficiency in reading, math, and science. And it's been very difficult for us to convince the state school board that this is a situation that needs priority treatment. I was hoping that during the COVID shutdown, with students not being in class, would really highlight the need for a different approach that is not location-based. When a student moves from one school to another, the money follows that student. And a lot of parents, and this is my own opinion, are not reporting that they do not have a permanent residence or they're couch surfing because they don't want DFS to be involved, because if they find out that there's no refrigerator or electricity connected with that family, DFS can get involved and charge the parents with negligence. So this is a situation that we're dealing with, not for a small percentage of our population, but for at least half of our students.
What have been the strategies that you have put into place? Have there been anything that you've seen some success with that situation?
Unfortunately, absolutely not. The state school board, our Department of Education, has the approach that everyone is quote unquote normal, that they have a home, that they're paying a mortgage on, that there are 2 parents, mother and father in the home, and that those parents have stable income. The per capita income for the people that live in our census tract, our zip code is $14,000 a year. And that's total. That's not taking out for taxes or anything else, which means that our families are making about approximately $1,000 a month. That's, and rent, food, everything has to come out of that. So these families are really struggling. If they have a place to live, they don't have food, they don't have electricity, which means that they don't have internet in the home.
Yeah, Amani, what I would like to do is connect with you offline, and we can chat about some resources, national resources. I can understand your community. So I will be reaching out to you. I have your email via the registration list, so please look for an email from me later today, and we'll connect, and I'll try to provide some supports with you.
I really, really appreciate that. Keep us all in your prayers. I can't sleep at night because this breaks my heart for these children.
Okay, thank you. I will absolutely connect. In the interest of time, I do want to move through a couple of the other questions. This might also provide some support with what you've just raised and flagged, Amani, which is the connection. We talked a lot about the connection with families, with resources and understanding their needs. And so I do have this question pinned for us to talk about. How have you been able to strike the balance between connecting families with resources and understanding their needs and the level of openness to receiving support? So I'm going to pitch this question to the Learn to Earn Dayton team first, and then capture anyone else who wants to come off of mute on this one.
So I'll pass that back to Erica.
So again, and I it's always going back to that connection, right? That relationship building. So once the family trusts you, they open up about what their circumstances are and helps you understand where to connect them or who and what resources to connect them with. Also, in empowering the family strategy, connecting them to resources, bringing the resources to them. Hosting events that are not just based on how many families can we get out, but how much information can they leave with. So just making sure that they're connected to the right places. You know, like I said, unfortunately, I can't personally help them all, but when I know what the need is and they open up to me to that extent to where it's on a personal level. I mean, it's been things like infestations of mice, wondering why the child is falling asleep in class. Well, the child can't sleep at night because they're terrified of the mice that are running through their apartment. So it's like, okay, so what do we do next? And utilizing my team and talking to people here who work with housing or who work with other realms of resources here in the community, like what do I do? Where do I send them? So it's just, again, that relationship building and that trust of knowing what this child needs and analyzing, paying attention to the family and the child, taking notes on what it is the child, is it a behavior thing in class? Okay, well, why? Let's figure out why. And then connecting them to, behavioral health. So it's just paying attention to the cues and just becoming that source, that liaison, that person that, like I said earlier, it's not so much more of this person's in my business, this person wants to know too much. It's I'm going to call Erica and tell her what's going on because I trust her and I know that she wants to help me.
Yeah, that's so good. Jane, I see you. Can you come off of mute, please?
One of the other things that we've done through the EGLC is work with our community partners. Children's Hospital, Dayton is a trusted partner. The Dayton Montgomery County Library in Catchment Region, they have brand new, because of a building campaign, branches in every neighborhood in the city. And many of the children's librarians and the family librarians in those areas have built relationships with families. So whenever we can, we tap into that. I think Erica knows probably everybody by first name in the community. That helps a lot to have somebody who's invested so much of her time, but it allows us also through the umbrella organization of the EGLC to reach out when we need something. So if we need some kind of assistance, the Dayton Art Institute last year opened their doors and helped us guide a number of children and families through one of our most prestigious artist exhibits here in town. And that made for families feeling more comfortable as they walked into the Dayton Art Institute. Trying to make places that aren't necessarily welcoming, or our families perceive that they're not welcoming, to feel welcoming for them.
Thank you, Jane. Anyone else want to add to this who is attending? Okay, hearing none, we're going to move a little bit forward. A couple of things I want to share, some resources, and then we'll move to another set of questions. There's more than two. Okay, I just threw some that I knew for sure. It has a lot of resources, information around family engagement. One of our communities, Campaign for Grade Level Reading Communities, is Read by Fourth, centered in Philadelphia, and they have a very large component of family engagement that they do with volunteerism called their Reading Captains Program. And so in the Padlet, you have access to their website here. I just wanted to call out this particular community. There's another one here, although the photo didn't come up real great, which is Wake Up and Read. This is in North Carolina. They also do extensive, strong family engagement work, and so I wanted to throw this here as well. Within our network of communities, we have many who are doing strong family engagement components, and so feel free to reach out to me for those of you who are interested in finding out who those folks might be. I'm happy to make connections there. So I'm going to move us to a couple more questions around program implementation, and then I see we've got around 10 minutes left and we'll close out our session today. So I do want to focus on this question where I think maybe Erica who's talking about access, or maybe it was Maya talking about access. Access is more than simply getting books to the families. What are the intentional connections that can be built with families as an integral part within the coalitions? So what I had meant by this question is it's more than just passing the books. It's more than just passing the literacy kits. It's about understanding how the families can use that information. Maybe it is, Erica, when you were talking about building that relationship. Can you share a little bit more about that piece, how it goes beyond just passing the information?
Yes, of course. So it's that continuous engagement, right? So with the literacy, reading is lit boxes, we survey the families. We survey them 2 weeks after receiving the box, and then a few weeks in to see, how did it work? We need to know, like, was it easy to do? Were the QR codes easy to access? Were the videos easy to understand? Did you enjoy the book? Did your children enjoy the book? And then we also surveyed the children. I went to the classrooms and I did a survey with them with a happy face, a sad face, and like an unsure face, and asked them questions. Do you remember receiving the box? How did you, were you excited to get the box? Do you remember the activities that were in the box? And it was, interesting to find that they were happy to work with their family at home. Some of the feedback was, yeah, my Nana helped me with this, or my sissy helped me, or my bubby tried to help me, but I told him this was my box, so just creating that environment for engagement at home. And also, like I said earlier, just knowing what the materials are that they should be having, like the access to the resources. Yes, more than just access to the books, more than just providing the books, but actually providing the books that are going to be beneficial for, the gains that the child needs to make. And also, tips and things like that. I've been interacting with the chat, and I've seen the bumper stickers and things like that, just getting the messages out. Engagement is a constant thing. It's every day. It's engaging at home with your own family and assessing how you engaged, and the difference and the dynamics of your family and how it may vary in other households, and just keeping that in mind when you're working with families and giving them the tools that they need to continue to be engagers all the time, because learning is all the time, not just in the classroom. So
That's awesome. I see hands raised, and so I'm going to pitch it to Jesse with United Way, who's another of our campaign communities, and I see you, Leah. We'll get you as well. Go ahead, Jesse.
Thank you. I'm Jesse. I'm from United Way of Southwestern Pennsylvania. We serve 5 counties in and around the Pittsburgh area. A little bit of rural and a little bit of urban. So we got a little bit of everything. And we call them learning kits, but we have similar boxes that we hand out. We focus primarily on the early emerging readers, so pre-K into kindergarten. And one of the things that we've been able to do with some of the tip sheets, but also working in collaboration with our Head Start families, is provide resources for the families, but also our Head Start partners throughout our region are using those kits to provide education for the parents to learn how to use them in the home, right? So while they're not in the classroom, they can then build those skills that they need to help their kiddos get to where they want to be school ready and hopefully reading on grade level by 3rd grade. So that was really born out of the pandemic, but it was something we've continued, it's hard to believe 4 years later, to really try to bolster the Head Start programs and their ability to engage with the families in a productive way, but also give the families some resources that they may not otherwise have access to within their homes. So we're very excited about that.
Thank you for that. Would you be willing to email me maybe example or sample, and then I can put that in the follow-up for everybody to see, even if it's screenshots or whatever you have to provide. I'd love to be able to spur some inspiration.
Absolutely. And just so everyone is aware on the call, those were also supported through the foundation community in Pittsburgh. So they're not cheap. But we will actually be, my colleague and I were talking about reaching out to our local PBS and seeing if post foundation funding, we can figure out a way to replicate some of the great work that you're doing as well in Dayton. So thank you for that.
Awesome. Thanks, Jesse. Leah, you had your hand up as well. I'd like to have the floor go to you now.
Yeah, just real quickly. So I really appreciate with the literacy kits that you're doing in Dayton, the way that you're including activities with it and thinking about like what's for that little human at that developmental level and literacy level. One thing that's been interesting in Detroit is the public park that we go to by our house in the summer. They give out books. The bookmobile will come from the library. That's all great. And we'll get the books and we'll look in, and 9 times out of 10, like there's nothing that would be at all accessible for my kids. One was in 2nd grade and got like a middle school novel, like great book, but not at all relevant to them. And it just hurt my heart because I thought about all the funding that's being wasted and all the resources. It comes from a place of great love, but it's not impactful. The other thing is, and I'm excited, United Way here is doing literacy kits, and Detroit Public Television and Michigan Learning Channel have done a lot with Read, Write, Roar and materials for at-home learning in the summer that go out like through the system in the libraries. But another thing that's been really interesting that connects to this is little free libraries. So there's a lot of emerging research that little free libraries, like they don't have an impact, but everyone loves them, right? And they're charming and donors love them. And so to me, it's sort of this like, please, like something like the literacy kits that you're showing us are so much more likely to have impact and have that family engagement. But it's hard, right? Like sometimes things pull on heartstrings, even if they're not the evidence-based things. So thinking about how we shape the narrative about what works to make it more compelling to funders and donors.
Yeah, thanks for that, Leah. All right, I'm noting the time that we've got about 5 minutes left. So I think, let me just go back to the chat and see if there's any questions. Okay, we've got our poll that just popped up. I would love for folks to just take a second in the interest of continuous improvement so that I can ensure that we're hitting on the topics that people are wanting to hear about. Please go ahead and fill out that poll. And I'm going to take my screen down from the Padlet, and I think we'll wrap it up for us today. So I do want to honor everybody's time and say thank you for this. What I knew would be a really engaging conversation, certainly not the last conversation about family engagement. I'm thinking about how we can continue this conversation moving forward. So everyone, you have my email. Please reach out to me around other topics related to family engagement if you would like me to lift this up in a future Crucible of Practice. I'm really excited to be able to do that and to provide these connections between our communities who are doing this work. So thank you for that. We do have one last slide, which I would like to invite Sierra to post and show, which would be our sessions, grade level reading sessions that are coming up. Today we have a double header, so there is one this afternoon around after school programs, and then we have a set of conversations happening next week as well. So please look and see in your calendar if you're able to join those at all. And I want to thank everybody for their time. Today we'll be following up with resources at the end of this week with everybody that has chatted. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.